Hello everyone, Percy7 here, back with some more Bloons TD6. Yes, it is now time for the Elite Dreadbloon boss battle. So what is different here from normal to Elite? Switched up my hero from Geraldo to Benjamin. Benjamin does actually make more money in the early game than Geraldo does, even with NFT. Yes, this does mean I do skip out on Bloon Trap just because I can't sell Bloon Trap on 26 or 27 to, generate even more money. But I figured Bloon Trap isn't necessarily needed here. Money generation, yes, is of course always an issue when it comes to boss battles. I just figured I don't necessarily need Bloon Trap, so I figured Benjamin is definitely going to be a lot better, as well as having Biohack. The ability will help out in the earlier rounds, just because if you didn't know, Dreadbloon upgrades ceramics into fortified ceramics, lead bloons get upgraded into fortified leads, rainbows get upgraded into ceramics, and so it's a huge kind of issue. Thankfully Biohack does kind of hopefully mitigate that issue of ceramics coming a lot earlier and being more ceramics than there really should. So farming strategy here is basically the same that you've kind of seen all the time. Of course, marketplaces into BRFs into Banana Central eventually. The way I do it is a bit different, as I go for a double discount village strategy, just because I figured double discounting is worth it here, just because you don't necessarily have to kill Dreadbloon immediately. Since Dreadbloon is so slow, he doesn't actually exit within the 20 rounds you're allotted. But that means you have to kill Dreadbloon before the 20 rounds are up, or else you automatically lose. Thankfully, Dreadbloon doesn't really have a whole lot of health, so it's actually not usually an issue, like kind of killing Dreadbloon. Tier 5 only has like 12.5 million HP, which sounds like a lot, but like Vortex and Lich have like twice that amount. So in Bloonarius, is so much more than that. So killing Dreadbloon really isn't really that difficult. I do suspect Dreadbloon might get like a miniature buff, maybe in the next update. I did kind of assume that Dreadbloon was gonna have more skulls, similar to how Vortex and Lich have I think it's 8 skulls. Elite Dreadbloon, only has 4 skulls, so he only switches categories one time around. I thought they were gonna do a bit more than that, but I guess not. So getting my farm down, greed is the name of the game here. Leak down to 42 lives, so it doesn't really matter, as base boomer now can fully defend for a little while before I have to upgrade it into a 202, which is going to be my defense for the first couple of rounds. And then eventually, once it starts getting close to round 40, I'm going to get a 103 flash bomb ninja down just to help out against ceramics. So what is going to be my strategy for the tiers of Dreadbloon? Well, tier 1, basically what I'm going to be doing is a sticky bomb and elite defender. Elite defender, if you did see in my normal attempt, did do really well against tier 1 of Dreadbloon. I figured, why can't it do the same for elite? Yes, elite does have more health, but elite defender easily shredded normal quickly, so I figured I'll just have to take a little bit more time for the elite. And of course, Sticky Bomb is also going to be helping out as well. Before we begin, quick shout out to Ethan Reed for kind of posting that video and kind of helping come up with my own strategy. I wasn't really sure what I was actually going to be doing for tier 2. Thankfully, he did introduce me into a technique that I didn't even know of, that I didn't even know applied into BTD6, called AMD stacking. Basically, what AMD stacking is you basically just kind of spam, of course, acidic mixture dipped alchemist around a tower, and of course that, if you spam enough of them, the tower basically has permanent uptime when it comes to lead detection. To be honest, I didn't even know this applied to BTD6. I thought this was only something in Battles 2, just because in Battles 2, there is actually an indicator saying that yes, this tower does have multiple AMD stacks on a tower. I didn't really notice this in BTD6 just because you would never really spam just kind of base 200 alchemist around a tower. You would just get permabrew if you wanted permanent AMD. Right, so starting at the end of round 39, here is tier 1 of elite. Don't actually have to get all my defense just kind of immediately. I'm holding off on getting elite defender, as I am gonna have to sell the elite defender, so I figured might as well have sticky bomb kind of destroy the shield, as well as whittle down into the first skull before getting elite defender. Yes, it is slower, but I need money generation, as I do want to get Banana Central by kind of tier 3. This kind of boss did take I think 3 attempts to do, just because the first 2 attempts I didn't generate enough money for the late game. So I figured that I'm gonna have to set a goal for myself where I absolutely need to get Banana Central by tier 3, or else I'm not gonna generate enough money for later. for the rock balloons, what I do here is I just kind of get Arcane Spike. I figured that that was probably the best and easiest thing to do, just because, you know, I could get Elite Defender, but unfortunately right now, rock balloons are immune to military. Yes, rock balloons do become immune to whatever the tower category is. Now that it's switched over to kind of magic, of course, you know, unfortunately, Arcane Spike, Arcane Spike doesn't really do a whole lot of damage against rock balloons. Elite Defender does, but unfortunately, it's going to be a bit too slow if Elite Defender is kind of focusing solely on damaging the rock balloons. So I get Artillery Battery. So why do I get Artillery Battery? Well, because as I was browsing the BTD6 subreddit, someone made a post asking the best way to kind of beat rock balloons. I was kind of interested to see what the community had to offer into this, and apparently rock balloons gain the properties of Moab class balloons, which I found to be actually kind of curious. And as you can see here, using Artillery Battery confirms this. If you didn't know, Artillery Battery does do extra damage to bads as well as boss balloons. And so, because of this, Artillery Battery absolutely kind of shreds, you know, rock balloons whenever the ability is active. Which is actually kind of interesting, meaning that Balloon Solver may not actually be the kind of best option for killing rock balloons, even though that's really kind of what it looks like. Attacks that do high Moab damage, like, you know, MAD, do surprisingly well against rock balloons. That was something I didn't even I wouldn't even have thought about or kind of realized, you know, seeing like just a simple fact that, you know, rock balloons have the properties of Moab class balloons. So it is kind of interesting, something to think about if you are going to do your own Elite Dreadbloon attempt. If you are struggling against rock balloons, remember rock balloons have the property of Moab class balloons. So use some attacks that, you know, do high Moab damage, like, you know, MAD or Artillery Battery if you are struggling. Alternatively, you could go for Balloon Solver for tier 1, but I went for Artillery Battery instead just because Artillery Battery is a lot cheaper. So my defense from, you know, round 50 to 60 was going for Alk Buff Nevermiss. Of course, that absolutely excels and shreds all the way up to 80. Unfortunately, we are going to need some additional support just because Alk Buff Nevermiss is going to struggle against, you know, fortified ceramics. And of course, fortified Moab class balloons when there aren't normally. And because of the fact that I was able to greed so hard during the boss battle, I was able to go for 3 banana research facilities, you know, before round 60, which is absolutely insane. Was it really worth it? I would say yes, it was. Even though I did have to sell a, you know, village for it, I figured it was a worthy investment in the long run. Tier 2 is when we utilize the AMD stacking technique I was talking about kind of earlier on. As you can see, I just have a bunch of base alchemists surrounding a tack shooter, which will eventually become my tack zone. I figured that for tier 2, the best defense was going to be MAD and tack zone, just because, you know, MAD was going to help out a lot against rock balloons just because they have the property of Moab class balloons, and tack zone does do pretty good boss damage. Elite Dreadbloon only has like 90,000 HP for tier 2, so tack zone can still absolutely shred this even though it is tier 2, and for most bosses this wouldn't normally work. Right now I figured that, you know, I can kind of wait a bit and not have to sell my marketplaces to be able to afford my MAD. So I figured might as well just kind of wait for the cash for MAD to become available before actually doing some damage. Of course, this does kind of hurt me just because I am taking a bit longer to actually be able to kill Dreadbloon, but I figured it was kind of a worthy investment just to kind of wait. After I afford MAD, I'm selling some of my marketplaces to be able to afford my attack zone and all my defense I kind of need. Getting this up kind of early while MAD is going to town on the Dreadbloon. I'm not really sure how many AMD alchemists you need kind of surrounding a tower for it to have, like, you know, full permanent uptime, but I figured that was kind of a good amount. So now that, you know, we've kind of beaten the rock shield of Dreadbloon, I figured that, you know, now would probably be the best time to kind of get my towers down. Even though Tack Zone isn't really doing any damage yet, he still is kind of going to do a decent amount. As you can see here, Tack Zone is absolutely just kind of shredding the kind of rock balloons at the moment. Unfortunately, just because, you know, rock balloons are immune to military ties right now, I am struggling quite a bit to kind of rock balloons. So getting Balloon Solver down just kind of ASAP, I just figured that was kind of the no-brainer and kind of best solution. And I was really hoping that, you know, Balloon Solver was going to be able to beat those just because it was getting pretty close to the end. And now that, you know, Dreadbloon has switched over to magic immunity, we're absolutely going to be shredding thanks to, you know, the combination of Tack Zone and MAD. So it didn't really take that long to kill tier 2, even though we did have to wait a bit for the kind of end there, but it was kind of worth the investment in the long run. As you can see here, you know, BC on round 67, which, you know, is pretty good. That's amazing. Even though I'm not really familiar with this boss, I probably could get it a lot earlier. So kind of going for defense, keeping my Alk Buff Nemesis around. I'm going for a Shell Shock just because Fortified Ceramics in the like 57, not 57, 75, 76, 78, those are going to be problematic rounds that I'm going to have to get defense for. Alright, so for tier 3, tier 3 was definitely need to be optimized kind of a lot more. I'm getting kind of MAD up just immediately, and for what I'm going to be doing for tier 3 is simply just Boomerang Paragon. The only hardest part about this is I'm going to have to burst down the first rock layer as well as the first layer of health, just so that way Dreadbloon is no longer immune to Boomerang Paragon's attacks. Getting Spectre up on my Never Miss just for defense after I pop Dreadbloon, as well as to build pops for Goliath Doomship, just because I said before, Goliath Doomship has absolutely insane elite boss damage, and so I figured that, you know, Goliath Doomship could basically solo Dreadbloon if he just wasn't immune to military for that one time. So I'm utilizing towers like, you know, MAD and Elite Defender just to hopefully break down that first rock layer a bit faster. It is taking a bit of a long time, but I figured, you know, I can take as long as I really want, as I just have to kill this guy, you know, before the 20 rounds are up. So thankfully this isn't really, I guess, that difficult. This did take kind of a bit of a while to actually kind of break down the little layer, as you can see here. Thankfully, you know, Boomerang Paragon does do pretty good boss damage now. I think it pound for pound, it actually does a lot more damage than Dart Paragon does. It's just that, you know, Dart Paragon was always so much cheaper than Boomerang Paragon, so there wasn't ever really a reason to go for Boomerang Paragon. I'm selling my marketplaces to be able to afford, you know, Boomerang Paragon a lot faster, now that we are kind of close to, now that we're a lot closer to the first skull. So kind of after we beat kind of the first skull, Boomerang Paragon can easily beat this. Going for a Ultra Boost for my Band Essential, as I figured that would probably be the best plan of attack instead of going kind of for more farm. Selling MAD immediately just because, you know, Boomerang Paragon can easily beat the Rock Bloons as well as Dreadbloon, as you can see here. Even though it is only degree 1, it is doing pretty decent damage. Unfortunately, it is around 92, and we're not gonna have much breathing room from, you know, tier 3 to tier 4. So I'm gonna have to be a bit cautious for the next tier, as I'm gonna need yet another Paragon for that tier. And as you can see here, you know, Boomerang Paragon did do pretty nice work. It only took like a few rounds to end up killing it. I'm actually going to keep Boomerang Paragon around just because I figured there's not enough time to sell it and make a profit off of actually selling Boomerang Paragon. So I figured it'd probably be best if I just kept it around, just to kind of help out during the kind of military portion of Dreadbloon's immunity. So thankfully, with keeping Boomerang Paragon around, I don't really have to sell much defense. I did keep Flying Fortress around because, again, I did want to build pops on the Goliath Doomship. Tier 4 is when things start to get a little messy, as it did take a bit too long to be able to actually kill this tier, which kind of does screw me over a little bit for tier 5, but thankfully that didn't end up being too big of an issue. I figured that the best way to end up beating this tier of Dreadbloon is simple, just going to be Boomerang Paragon as well as Goliath Doomship. Goliath Doomship's, like I said, elite damage, elite boss damage, it's absolutely insane. It's a lot higher than any other Paragon that we've had before. I'm kind of wondering if, you know, Wizard Paragon's going to be the same, but who knows. Anyway, it is taking kind of a bit of a long time to be able to actually kind of beat this tier. Thankfully, once we do be able to afford Goliath Doomship, it should be a whole lot faster. I did kind of sell everything preemptively, as I was like 100k off from affording Doomship. I didn't actually want to sell any BRFs, but I was kind of making a lot of money, so the 100k I was able to make like within a round. As you can see here, the degree is only 26. That's not very high, but it doesn't really need to be all that high. As you can see here, even with only degree 26, Goliath Doomship is absolutely kind of shredding this tier. Unfortunately, once Dreadbloon becomes immune to military, it's going to be a whole lot slower. Now that Dreadbloon has become immune to military towers, as you can see here, Boomerang Paragon, is taking a heck of a long time to actually be able to beat this tier. Nothing I can really do about that. I just figured that it'd probably be best to start farming again, just because we are going to be here a bit of a while. But looking at the damage, it is going to be enough to be able to kill it before round 120 comes, although it's just going to be just barely there. I figured, you know, money at this point I guess doesn't really matter, just because once I sell everything, I'm definitely going to have way over $1 million. So again, speed here isn't really an issue. It's just got to make sure to kill it before 120. is the round we're aiming for here. Skipping forward a bit, as you can see, it's around 112. Once we got past that kind of primary military immunity, the killing it Dreadbloon didn't really take all that too long. As you can see there, the bombs from Doomship absolutely wiped out the shield. Alright, so as you can see here, skipping over to kind of round 120, I got every single Paragon down on the screen. Well, not every single one. I am missing Dart, but I feel Dart's not really necessary at this point, as Temple would probably do kind of marginally better than Dart at this point. So just kind of getting my sacrifices down, not being able to go for True Sun God, but I figured Sun Temple is good enough. And I really only need to kind of get through the military immunity phase as fast as possible, so that way Goliath Doomship can carry the damage from kind of the rest of the towers. Like I said before, I was really heavily relying on Goliath Doomship to really just kind of do like 99% of the damage, as you can see here. And the bombs, of course, do so much damage that, like, you know, Goliath Doomship can easily do this. Even though the damage is looking kind of slow at this point, whenever we use the Goliath Doomship ability, it does do pretty good damage. And also remember, we do have the explosions from Engineer Paragon's sentries. So, of course, that will make it a bit faster. Although since, you know, Engineer Paragon is only like degree 1 at this point, it's not doing a whole lot of damage, but I figured it was worth it to just kind of keep buying and reselling them. Not buying and selling, using the ability, as I don't think having them on the field will kind of do more damage than the explosion would, honestly. So as you saw there, you know, we got through the kind of first shield kind of almost instantly. Unfortunately, once we get to this part, it's going to be a lot slower, as well as a lot more difficult to do. Just because, you know, Doomship's not doing its insane damage anymore, we have to kind of rely on all the other Paragons. As you can see here, it is definitely kind of a lot slower than it was when Doomship was attacking. The highest damage attack we have right now is Ninja's Sticky Bomb, although that, again, that doesn't do a whole lot of damage just because it's only degree 1. I did kind of put all my eggs in one basket and just kind of relied solely on Doomship to be able to beat this, as I figured, you know, Doomship, again, is stupidly broken, is going to be the best damage attack we have at the moment. So even though Goliath Doomship isn't really attacking, thankfully all the Paragons were doing enough damage that, you know, it didn't really make kind of too much of a difference anyways. We were able to kind of beat down the immune to military and the rock shield kind of in a speedy fashion. So again, that was just kind of that. Dreadbloon is a very interesting and unique boss, the most unique we've had so far. He's definitely not the hardest boss we've had. I wouldn't be surprised if Ninja Kiwi decided to kind of buff Dreadbloon in a patch, or kind of in the next update like 35.0 or something like that. Just because he's not kind of really much of a challenge. Either that or Ninja Kiwi is going to put him on harder maps. Of course, Ninja Kiwi put him on Monkey Meadow for kind of the first week, just so that way players can actually get used to him and kind of understand, you know, hey, what are we doing here? What's the best strategy? And so on and so forth. I wouldn't be surprised if we started seeing Dreadbloon a lot more advanced maps, which I feel like is where Dreadbloon would fit if Ninja Kiwi decides to not buff him. Out of all the bosses, I still think Vortex is the hardest, just because that stun is such a large radius by, you know, later tiers, that it does end up becoming a bit of a killer. Unfortunately, you know, Doomship exists, so the stun, again, doesn't really matter at this point. Basically, what I'm trying to get here is Doomship is absolutely busted. NK, please nerf Doomship. Just sometime soon, please. It's busted. But as you can see here, you know, we are doing pretty good damage here. Every time the bombs go off, we're just kind of cutting like a third of the HP off. And so that's basically how I beat Elite Dreadbloon. Boss wasn't too overly difficult. It's quite easy, in my honest opinion, just because you can still farm whilst Dreadbloon is on screen, so I think that's what makes him a lot easier than all the other bosses. But I guess we'll see what NK has in store for future weeks.